Psychosis as the dying of a thought constellation. Just like trigger point therapy in the body, it's like trigger point in the brain. And map consciousness is like a different proprioception. It's a proprioception of the crisis that's happening in consciousness of humanity instead of just the self-perception of the ego. It's a shared phenomena. And I was thinking, why thought? And it's because we get something out of it. We get the juice of pleasure. Even if we're angry, we get the juice of pleasure. And that's why Dr. David Hawkins says, surrender the juice that you get from identifying with a positionality. So nothing is inherently bad, but if we're getting this juice all the time, we're actually warping our brain and our physiology. So two different people might be able to do the same thing, but one is being warped and the other isn't. And that's a different quality of being there. And it's the quality of our being that creates and reverberates through the whole of the universe. So that's what's important in general. The quality of one's being would also alter the things that one would gravitate towards anyways. I was thinking that psychosis is like incoherence because the intentions and the results don't agree. So in mania, one has these intentions, but one isn't able to get the results that match the intentions, and it's partly because of the way society is designed. So then eventually one is seen as psychotic and mentally ill when that wasn't the original energy behind it. I feel like part of the trouble is that we as people who go into those states don't have the right context for ourselves to unfold it safely in terms of knowing that the collective also doesn't have an understanding and caring context through which to receive these experiences. So it's up to us as individuals who experience these experiences to really be safe and understand ourselves really well, so we don't get put in line of the vision of those who would want to label and divide us and put us in the lowest of the low places in the world, which makes it actually difficult to unfold the vision that we were acquainted with. And that's why the mental health system doesn't agree with me, because I see people like me as people with powerful brains. And those powers, not as in better or worse or anything, just different. There's no place for that area of the brain in the unfolded design of physical reality. So then when there's no place for that brain to unfold whatever it is that area of the brain wants to unfold, then people get directed into places that will give them medication so they forget about that area of their brain. It's like a de-braining. And I was thinking about this self-dialogue because when I was in mania the very first time, I did a lot of talking to myself out loud, on audio, writing. And so I was thinking about how right now I'm actually doing what I was doing before I knew about what the concept of mania was, or the concept of mental illness. And this concept and this story was overlaid over my experience, or the portion of my experience that the system was aware of. And so this is mania from the inside out, despite what professionals might think of it from the outside in. I'd like to know if they've ever experienced it for themselves. Actually, no, I don't care. And I actually feel like the old self becomes incoherent with the new self. Through mania, through map consciousness. And then really it would be that when one is always unfolding anew, the old self is always incoherent with the new self. And the new self is new and always renewing itself. And maybe that's the only incoherence, is from the old to the new, the old to the new. So the incoherence in that way is coherence. And I was thinking about a polygraph test and how we have these subconscious physiological reactions even when we consciously answer a certain way. And to me, that's partly something that reminds me of how we're picking up on all these other energies, even if we consciously don't realize it, and they're accumulating in us, and we're seeing things and we're having perceptions. Even if we're rationalizing, our subconscious mind is picking up other things that we're missing. We're not seeing those things, and as those things are missed because we're busy abstracting and intellectualizing about 1,000 yesterdays, one day that accumulation starts to interfere with the conscious, supposedly conscious ego thought process happening, and then that gets disturbed. So the ego can only miss so much. It can only not act for so long, because the subconscious accumulation will eventually act. And then that's the inner earthquake. Maybe the inner earthquake is coming for the masses. And if they don't understand this stuff in a different way, I'm definitely going to delete that. And in map consciousness, we increase the mind's proprioception. We can see what we're doing. We can see our actions. And once we're sort of acting in alignment with the universe and our gestures, so in a way, we're sort of coherent and in order. We now can perceive this other order where we see what's happening on the collective level. We see what's happening to the plants. We see what's happening to other people, because we're not actually thinking about ourselves from our own perspective, because we've dissolved that process of shuffling around illusions of sound. And this is when we feel really responsible, and that's why people sometimes seem to go crazy in map consciousness and trance consciousness, because we actually aren't relating everything to our ego process. We're seeing the process of life and what's actually happening, and it drives us nuts quite quickly. And we feel responsible because we can see it. If we can see it, we feel responsible. But if we're busy abstracting in illusions, we don't see it, so we don't feel responsible, so we're not acting. If we could all see and act, this mess would get cleaned up very quickly. I feel like at some point I could start talking by asking more questions instead of making statements, because even my statements aren't meant to be facts. They're not facts at all. But just not asking questions where people can actually search their memory for answers. I wonder if you can see what I'm saying. If you can see something from the sounds of what I say, if you can picture something or see a different picture in actuality, or see the pictures in your mind differently. Because if that happens, the brain changes and there's some space. And I'm not saying this in some kind of like mystical woo-woo type way or anything about me in particular. It's a matter of human beings speaking in a different way, because anyone can, and anyone can see in a different way, and in a different way moment to moment, because each moment is different and requires a different way of looking. And by looking in a different way each moment we're different and made new. Words can open up space in the brain. Sometimes I feel I have no idea what to do, and that's why I'm just talking to myself. But if there's this sound barrier of the ego in all of us in a way, and it's this bubble of sound, I wonder if some of certain sounds and certain words and certain phrases and certain things can create holes in that barrier. almost neutralize it. If we have this sound barrier, certain words and phrases hit a certain part and poke a hole, like poking a hole in the ozone layer. The oxygen is too negatively charged. It has another electron or something, or it's O3 with an electron. I don't know. But can the electrons of these words, or whoever's words, pierce a hole in that bubble of sound so that the light might come through, so that one can see for themselves? Because it's only about seeing for oneself, not seeing and absorbing something somebody said. How do I make salient the features of mania, as this is how the universe is gesturing us? This is how the universe is gesturing us to gesture. It wants to free our body and mind from the rules of thought and the programs and conditioning that we hold in our neurology. And thought has taken over and restricted the material process in the brain. The way the brain cells can move fluidly is not as fluid because of all the sound and noise in there. And map consciousness and trans consciousness is to participate with Gaia, with the eyes of Gaia as Gaia. And when one sees in this way, one can see the subtle. And when one can see the subtle, amongst the gross and manifest, one is festive. One has festive eyes as one can see the subtle festivities all about oneself. And we attend to the unseen and the not yet spoken. I feel like mania is an invitation to participate. I read this article by somebody named Danny from Mad in America, and I thought it was really good. I don't think I made any notes on it, but I wanted to email him and say thank you. And map consciousness are gestures of infinity. So mania is seeding infinity in the brain. It's seeding new brain cells, the fluidity of the brain cells. And the brain cells grow and expand and contain more water and more charge and can discharge and redistribute more charge and grow and change. It becomes so fluid. It becomes, when our mind screen is clear, it becomes holographic. It becomes so quickly changeable and so infinite, just as so much information can be recorded in such a small amount of holographic film. The brain stops recording and is translating and amplifying the light that it's receiving unimpeded. Who are we when we perceive synchronicity? Synchronicity perceived is meaning. It's a city of meaning, synchronizing meaning. I can see this holographic fluid brain like this colorful light changing, like an instrument of the rainbow. The brain becomes playful. It's playing with meaning and light. It's translating the light it sees into meaning and sound. Light is changed into meaning and sound. And based on that meaning and sound, how will we act? And how does that translation of light to meaning and sound within us change our actions? And what does that create and unfold in reality and actuality? So what we create out there is a result of the light that we let in. And it's so beautiful that if we actually saw that beauty and the meaning of it moment to moment, we wouldn't destroy each other. We wouldn't destroy nature. We would co-create something so beautiful. To be in touch with that beauty, one has to create in alignment with that. There's no choice. Anything else would be against one's neurology. The magic is when you're not there, when the ego's not there. Altered states are to alter the state of actuality, not just alter the state of me and my pleasurable experience. That just creates a scar in the brain. If those higher energy states aren't translated into some kind of creation after the fact that improves the beauty of the world, those beautiful states are for the world, not for personal gratification. How can personal gratification be beautiful? Only a change in the quality of our brain will change the world. And the quality of our brain is changed by the way we see. And there's that quote, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change, by Wayne Dyer. I would say when we change the way we look at things, we change the way we create. And when we change the way we create, that might transfer to other people by osmosis. Or they might see that pattern holographically, and it might impact their clear mind screen and change the way they unfold reality. It's like passing it on subtly as opposed to obviously, like people do when they buy someone next in line a coffee. People might buy into this new way of being without even knowing they were ever sold, because they weren't told and they weren't made into a mold. We need to change the brain algorithm, the way it computes. But we don't actually need to change it because it's already naturally there. It's a matter of removing the disputes. And the brain knows these other games. I already played a different game, that Celestine prophecy game about being paid and paying for insights. And reality picked up on it. We're wired for this type of play. The Vision Cast blueprint is blueprinting a different algorithm for seeing and acting. There's an algorithm of clear perception. And the thing is that when one has that algorithm of clear perception in the brain, there's no algorithm for action, as it's spontaneous and unpremeditated. Krishnamurti says meditation is unpremeditated art. And that is the algorithm of no algorithm of action that results from the algorithm of clear perception. And that algorithm is an algorithm of participation. We're now participating with our perceptions in the moment and not separated from the moment. And it's the algorithm of the moment with a clear mind screen that doesn't have a pattern imposed on it from past conditioning. So there's the algorithm versus the pattern and the conditioning. The pattern and the conditioning is in the way of the natural algorithm that is there.